At a very young age, at 15, I found myself trapped. I was part of a broken home, and one of my first situations that I ever went through was domestic violence. My best friend was being fed cocaine by my friend's dad. There are things that I can't share because it's wild. One of my biggest memories is being locked into a bathroom, being told how terrible I am. I didn't know it would go here, but I'm going to share it. I actually ended up dancing for money. For a really long time, I believed I was worthless. But there was a little spark inside of me that was able to rise up in that situation. Fear, judgment. You've got to embrace those parts of the journey, but you've got to be willing to look at them and break through them. How many times are you going to put yourself into an experience until it's enough? This podcast is about meeting myself at my edges and finding my courage so that I can see what's on the other side, go to the unlimited possibilities of this reality, supporting people to inspire them through my story to create the reality that they want to create versus the one that they were dealt with. Hey guys, my name is Alana G, and this is the first episode of the Uncapped Potential. It's a podcast going to be really for the rebels out there and the rock stars, the people that have been raised in interesting situations and they want to switch it up and create a new story for themselves. The Uncapped Potential has really been part of my journey as, someone that's been raised in sort of like a traumatic environment. Very early on, I was part of a broken home, and one of my first situations that I ever went through was domestic violence as a teenager. So it was a very different reality to the one that I have now. And what I really learned in those situations was, courage. And this podcast is about meeting myself at my edges and finding my courage so that I can see what's on the other side, go to the unlimited possibilities of this reality. And so you'll hear me talk about, wealth. I love talking about abundance and wealth. I love talking about courage, environment, and really supporting people to inspire them through my story to create the reality that they want to create versus the one that they were dealt with. So starting back when I was young, it was a bit of a wild ride. Like I said, very different. Grew up on the Gold Coast, lots of drug, sex and rock and roll. And that started actually very young, maybe 13 even, where I really struggled with fitting in. I felt like people cared about things that I didn't really care about, whether it be the way they looked or, just drama. And I think really it comes from not really having a stable home environment. I was moving multiple times through my life as a young girl, and then I fell into my first relationship with a boy whose father was an alcoholic who would bash him in the middle of the night from a very young age. And so, of course, his behaviours were to bring that to our relationship. And for 5 years, this went on, and it was quite traumatic. So at a very young age, at 15, I found myself trapped, and I was being locked in bathrooms, told how horrible and terrible and just, really nasty things. So for a really long time, I believed that, I was worthless, that I didn't deserve good things in life or happiness. But there was a little spark inside of me, definitely, that was able to rise up in that situation. And when it got to a point where I thought that I was going to die, I found a solution to get this boy out of my house so that I could finally create space and break up with him at the time. But I was so scared to break up with him because I felt that I was going to be killed, which isn't a very nice feeling. So my solution was to get on a plane and go traveling overseas, and it really changed everything for me because it allowed me to go and discover who I was without all of the, pointing of fingers and all the conditioning that was being put into my brain at the time. And I was able to go on a self-discovery journey, and even though I went traveling for a while, I came back, I did put myself back into that situation again. And I realized in that there are patterns in ourselves that in myself that I needed to look at, that I was allowing. And how many times are you going to put yourself into an experience until it's enough, or until on the other side of that would have been death? And I just took a courageous leap to find a way for myself to heal this part of me. And I think because this boy was so close to our friendship group, and this was before the time of domestic violence was even a thing, so no one even really understood domestic violence as something that was in life, or how to navigate it. So my friends and I cried wolf many times, didn't really know how to save me or support me. They were also, young adults and teenagers that were all in this kind of toxic cycle of abuse with drugs and alcohol, and the way we treated each other. Like, it was really appalling behavior. I look back now and I would never, ever hope that anyone has to experience life in that way. But yeah, we were very nasty and mean and horrible to each other. People would wake up with their eyebrows shaved or it was wild. Someone had been sleeping with someone's girlfriend, or their phone was stolen, like the amount of phones that were stolen back when we were teenagers. But one of the things was, this guy was a friend of everyone's. And so I learned that I had to create peace within myself and forgiveness and heal, because he wasn't going to leave our friendship. He was in that group with us, but the only person that could do the work was me. Like, I could keep crying wolf, or I could keep, bringing up this painful story, or I could find a way to move through it and past it. And that was one of my first courageous steps, is just moving through and past this part of me. But yeah, if I kept investing my time in being so sad about this experience, I was the one drinking the poison constantly. I was the one that was harming myself. It's one of my biggest memories, is being locked into a bathroom, being told, how terrible I am. And now knowing how the brain works, it actually holds on to those beliefs that are projected at you. And I was sitting in this bathroom for hours and hours, just listening to how crap I was and how shit of a person I was, and just doing whatever I could to kind of get out of the situation. Growing up on the Gold Coast, my best friend was being fed cocaine by my friend's dad. There are things that I can't share because it's pretty wild and nasty, and things that I don't want to share on behalf of other people that happen. But this was what was going on when we were teenagers and young adults. But I'm so grateful for my courage to get out of that relationship, even though it took many years. It got to a point where I was so fearful of dying that I had to find a solution to get out of it. So I found a way to get this guy out of my house, and then put myself on a plane to go overseas. And so when I went overseas, I found my own sovereignty again. I found my freedom again. And I started to be able to do this self-discovery journey of who I truly am, or who I want to be. And that's what I found in every time I traveled, is every time you go to a new environment, you get to create yourself. Like a canvas is who do I want to be in this experience? And moving into young adultship, actually, I didn't know it would go here, but I'm going to share it because I'm authentic, and that's what this is all about. But I actually ended up dancing for money. So, and I remember going to this club to work and having that thought to myself, who am I going to be in this experience? And there was still part of who I am that was really strong. It's not about being fake, but it's about being all of who you are that you haven't let come out yet. And so I went into that club thinking I'm going to be all these other things that weren't me. But I realized really early on in that I had to just be completely me, because that's all I knew. And it was just bringing more of me to the space. And I actually had such growth in that job, because I was able to embrace parts of me that I hadn't explored yet. I got to embrace confidence and courage and sexiness and playfulness. And also, I really got to learn how to create wealth in another way. And, years later, I realized that was out of alignment to who I want to become on my next part of my journey. But at the time, it really helped me to learn that we are uncapped potential. Like, we can actually find so many alternative routes to our life. We just got to stay committed to the vision of what it is that we want. And for me, why I started dancing, I have really no idea. I think it was out of courage. It was like, I want to learn how to be, I want to be resourceful for myself. I'd come from, not having any money upbringing. Like, we moved houses all the time. I wanted to create some wealth for myself. I wanted to put myself through personal training school at the time. I, just wanted to stand on my own 2 feet, and that was what I went to do. And in that, created this whole nother version of me, of this freedom version of me, where I was like fully expressed. So 8 years ago, I fell pregnant, and I was traveling around the world at the time. And I knew right from a very young age that all I wanted to be was a really good mother and a very present mother. So when I decided to have my daughter, I decided that I was going to find a way that I could create money whilst also being very present and being around my daughter. And that's when I got on a plane from Amsterdam all the way to Sydney to a conference of people that were teaching how to generate money online. And that began my journey of how to inspire people in the online space whilst also creating wealth. And being of inspiration was really exciting for me because of my past and my history. I knew I could turn the stories around to, better humanity, to better other people, to live as an example. And that was something that I really wanted to do because I loved inspiring people, because I knew my journey, isn't unique. I just knew that I had something in me that allowed me to do all these really courageous things to be able to create the life that I'm creating. I had traveled to multiple third world countries as a white, blonde female on her own and worked with street kids. I had danced and, gotten naked for people. There's all these things that I had done that was courageous. And so my next step was to find a way that was going to be benefit for the greater good. I never want anyone to think that they're stuck in the past or whatever they were dealt with, because I found a way to get out of that. I found solutions and toolkits and things that I can use to really change that. And if I had to stay in my patterns over and over again, I think I would go on insane. So I'm super grateful to have just taken this bold step to learn something new. And I arrived in Sydney in this big room of people. I was pregnant, I was jet lagged, but I was there and started to work towards the life that I have now. So I discovered in the journey of the online space that there are a lot of things that you need to overcome. And some of those things are, being scared to be seen. And hence every time I lean in more to how I can be seen more, because every time I broke through being seen in the digital space actually allowed me to create a ripple impact. And now, after 6 years in the online space, I've created multiple communities that are thriving of conscious entrepreneurs that wanted to utilize the digital space, that are now supporting themselves through their own platforms to create visions and missions and all sorts of wonderful things. And everything that you do once is always scary, but as you do it over and over again, you become more fearless and it becomes normal, and then you upgrade, right? And then you go into another level of yourself and another version of the reality shifts and outside of you starts to transform because inside of you transforms. And so knowing that, I just implemented that each day. And there are so many learnings on the journey, but one of the deepest ones that transpired for me when I entered the right environment. So after a couple of years in online business, I was with a couple of different companies. I hadn't really found what worked until I found a community that really focused on wealth generation and wealth concepts and wealth consciousness. Is what I'm really passionate about now. And one of the first learnings that I learned in that space was this deep level of trust. Like, you need to trust that even if my words right now don't come out perfect, that they are going to create impact, that they are going to resonate with someone, and then that's going to create a ripple effect. And you've got to have deep trust in that you are growing to the reality that you want. And only when you limit yourself by scarcity, like fear, judgment, and they're all part of the journey, you've got to embrace them. Like, you've got to embrace those parts of the journey, but you've got to be willing to look at them and break through them so that you can step into the realm of abundance and bliss and peace and joy and love, all of those frequencies. And actually, I entered my online space, I'm going to talk about this as well, after having a medicine journey, which took me to the quantum. And I was able to see everything through the eyes of frequencies. Everything is just a level. Every part of your journey is just another step that you can take to go to the next world that you want to see, right? And courage, funny enough, lives before love, joy, peace, and abundance. Courage, willingness, acceptance. So it was only natural that through my hardships and the learnings of having to always come back to acceptance of what was, but still have the courage and the willingness not to let that define me, to take steps towards where I actually want to be, not versus what I was dealt, created this natural new vibrancy within my own frequency, which then shifted the reality around me. So I started to have love more. I started to have joy more. I started to have peace more. Peace was one of the greatest lessons as well. Like, finding peace, I encourage everyone to find peace. And I think it comes from knowing that you're not completely in control. Like, there is spirit and you get to co-create. That really stepped me into another whole level of abundance. And so over our journey, I really desire and know I want to inspire the learnings that I've taken to each of those frequencies, levels, the wealth. And by the last 4 years, like, I've made incredible impact in so many people's lives. Like, thousands of people's lives have been impacted by a decision that I made for myself in my journey. Like, I just wanted to discover what I could create for myself and my daughter. And because I was a permission slip and I stood up and I shared my journey and I spoke online through my content and my posts, it allowed someone else to go, I want to say yes to me too. And then that went on to someone else's yes, and then someone else's yes. And now we have these beautiful mama bears in one of my movements. It's a very unschooling, conscious mama movement. It's really about the barefoot hippie mama. And they now are building off-grid lands for their families as a result of that one yes. And more recently, now I have like this incredible movement of 25-year-olds, like 20-year-olds discovering new pathways of wealth consciousness, like making better decisions for themselves. Like, they're not having the reality that I had at 25. They're actually now choosing right now to be intentional with their pathway and making those better choices at 25. So you can only imagine the collective changes that are happening by people tapping into the education and the resources and the space that I'm within to be really intentional with their wealth creation and their legacy and their imprint on this earth and how that can impact everyone. So I guess that's why the Uncapped Potential was born. It was like really like I had this moment realization that we are so unlimited possibilities. Like we have no idea what can be created. Like there is magic happening everywhere all the time. And when we go and discover a part of ourselves or embody our part of ourselves, that's what the Uncapped Potential is about, is embodying parts of yourself that you're intentional with to see what exists. So being intentional with your leadership, being intentional with your time, being intentional with what scares you and leaning into that to give it a go and see what happens, because that is the potentiality that we are. We are so uncapped. I ran a half marathon across the Great Wall of China once. No training, but like, you can do that. We see people doing these incredible, extraordinary things all the time. People with no limbs, people with, things that could hold them back, essentially, but they instead utilize them to tap into this potentiality that they are, which is uncapped. And as a result, create massive ripple effects and massive change in the world. And so that's what the Uncapped Potential is all about, and that's what I'm here to bring, and that's what I'm leaning into myself. I'm just finding the fear and doing it anyway. There's a lot of times in my life where I don't feel fear anymore. I actually feel like I've stepped so much into so many different scary situations and lent into parts of myself, like put myself on stages. I've put myself in places and spaces that most wouldn't. And as a result, here I am just doing that again on a bigger platform, hoping and desiring to really shift you guys through my own expression of what that looks like. So yeah, this is the Uncapped Potential. Thanks for tuning in. And I would love if you enjoyed this episode to keep following me, like, share. Check out my Instagram, check out my social media. Come and join me for the journey. This is episode 1, but I am committed to stay strong and bring as much value as I can. And as I become comfortable, I'll be able to share more with you. To be honest, this has been super vulnerable for me and very uncomfortable. So I would love and appreciate your energy by liking, sharing, following. The energy exchange is so powerful when we contribute to each other, and that's really when community rises. So if you really love something, please put it in the comments, reach out to me, and just let me know that you want to hear more value, and know that my door is always open for anyone that would love to learn about what it is that I do, how we create wealth in the digital space. It's something that I'm passionate about. We've got an incredible community globally, and reach out. There's a beautiful discovery process that truly transformed my life. It really asked me the right questions in creating my vision. So we've created this 90-minute process that you can have access to really discover what it is that you want to create in this world and see if we're matched to line up to your vision and make that happen. Lots of love, guys, and we'll see you on the next episode.